let's see what we got going on today. One of the first things that I'm hearing is, if you are feeling it, then you understand that there is a reset that is great in your life. If not a great reset, is what a lot of people are coming to realize right now. It's something in my chest. It's something that I can feel is what I'm hearing. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can tell that things are changing because intuitively our body and our minds are changing. Not only do we have clearer, we see things differently now, we also have these sensations that we can't necessarily explain, but we're looking for information for, and we're asking for it, right? And here it is what Spirit is saying, and they're pointing out Friday and how this all started, basically weeks ago, that we're all undergoing an alchemical process where our DNA is changing. We're becoming more of the embodiment of spirit, or whatever it is that we chose to embody. You know what I'm saying? Some people can be on the left field. It's not, I don't feel one way or the other about it, because we all choose to be what we want to be, right? We're all on a soul's journey, but sometimes the souls don't communicate with the journey itself. And you know what I'm saying? Like, people are just meant to go different pathways, right? And the Two of Pentacles, it's like everybody's juggling something. Their minds are in something. They're focused on something. They're trying to do something. They're trying to make something happen. And I feel like it's all over the place right now with this, And normally, when I think of twos, it would be something that is balanced. But I feel like everything is a juggling act, and you don't necessarily know what needs to be paid attention to right now. Some people may be looking or lacking direction, in their lives, looking around, wondering what the hell is going on. You know what I'm saying? Where is it at? Like, where's my money pot? Where's my pot at the end of the rainbow? Because, I've been doing the work, or I've been putting in effort to my manifestations with pure intention, or intention that I'm working on purifying. I'm getting this where's it at energy. And also, I feel also that the answer to that is almost at a stalemate right now, where things are kind of like, feel like they're stagnant, but they're not. But nobody can see it, is what I'm hearing here. It's like, we don't see this convergence that's happening right now. They're using the convergence as a planetary alignment that allows certain energies to come through, almost as if it was a portal, right? That give us the opportunity to go through incremental growth or incremental change rather rapidly, is what I'm also getting here. And then not only does it take time to adapt, it also takes time to realize that these things actually do happen, that they happen frequently. Choice and chance, that's something that we intend, you know what I'm saying? Especially when we're really passionate about what it is that we're choosing. This has a way of putting a lot of momentum to influence that change inside of your life. So if you're damning your name or swearing on your name, now's not the time to be doing that, much less anybody else outside of yourself, because the mirror aspect or the reflection of that is hitting rather rapidly as well. So things are intensifying. We are manifesting at a higher rate right now. You know what I'm saying? A lot of you might have some kind of day-to-day confirmation that things are changing, things are intensifying. You might be feeling unsettled. You might be feeling insecure. Your little self-doubt issues may be coming up. You know what I'm saying? What am I doing? Where am I going? What the fuck is happening right now? Those could be possibilities in your life as well. Where am I headed with this relationship? Or where am I at with this relationship? Whether it's myself, my business, anything outside of myself, all these things are coming up for review and reflection. And they're showing me Pluto in my head, and they're using the term war. You know what I'm saying? You're at war with yourself, because we're in the mind right now. And a lot of people don't necessarily understand that. The first indication that you're all up in your head is that they're all up in your head about whatever it is that's being said here. You know what I'm saying? Like, asking too many questions, not allowing the message to answer. This is divine discernment as well, because they're pointing that out, that a lot of people are missing the messages, or missing their intuitive guidance, because they're too busy focused on something physical, something material. You know what I'm saying? Like, something has to happen. I need to create this, or I need to do this, or I need to move this to do this. And this is part of that juggling act that they're talking about. It's like, you really don't. What I'm seeing here is, for those of you who are going through this stuff, you really don't have a lot of energy to focus on anything else but trying to maintain yourself while all these things are overstimulating you. And they're also showing me that if you look at it backwards, it's actually not allowing yourself to be stimulated while all these things are happening simultaneously. We're looking for clues, we're looking for answers, we're looking to understand ourselves more, or we're looking to get out of a situation. All these things are happening simultaneously, right? So relationship matters, right? And a lot of people don't literally consider the fact that the primary relationship that anyone has, especially in a reading, is with themselves, right? You know, even though that we usually we usually read for people, but some people get readings for outside of themselves, when in reality these readings are actually for what's internal. This is the relationship within yourself. You know what I'm saying? This is one of the most important things that you have going on in your life. And a lot of people, when they hear this message, will realize that there's something inside of them that tells them that they may or may not be paying attention to themselves in the way that they should be right now. You know what I'm saying? Because everything is chaos, and it's no surprise because death is here. You know, but where there's death, there's rebirth, right? Because when one door closes, another one opens. And if we're more opportunistic at what we see, especially when we let go of the past or we realize something about ourselves, we're not meant to stand there. We're meant to continue. We're meant to be proud of what it is that we've accomplished somehow. Regardless of what it is, how minuscule it is, it doesn't matter. Because that's our birthright. We're allowed to enjoy these things, regardless of how mundane you may see them to be, right? But that's the joy of this reality, is that when we perpetuate those things, it only brings in more joy, because now we're focused on the joyful aspects or the observant aspects of what it is that we're presented with, and looking at the optimism behind it, or being optimistic about it, instead of being like, oh, well, shit, that's not going to work, or I'm not going to fucking do that because of this or that. And you know what I'm saying? Like, that whole rhetoric that a lot of people fucking get on, dude, when they're discouraged about what it is that they're fucking doing when following their passion. You know what I'm saying? Because distraction is a motherfucker, but it can also be a killer when you realize that the only thing that you're facing is the adversity of your own beliefs against what it is that you're trying to enact, right? And it's hard, you know, because we don't understand to the depths that goes unless we challenge ourselves to go to those depths, right? To see those things for ourselves and understand whether we have something internal with ourselves that we don't see eye to eye with, that the universe is reflecting to us, or the latter, where we're getting something else instead of what it is that we asked for. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they're using the term divine lesson, but they're also showing me flowers. They're mentioning the term floral. It's about this expanding aspect of the flower that's actually in the middle. You know what I'm saying? Where all the pollen comes out and it radiates, you know, it kind of goes into the air and makes more of them, right? They're showing me the center of the flower, which there's also the heart. And I feel like there's a temperature that can be like kind of like here and there. You know, it feels like it's almost cold at times. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm cold in my chest is what I'm hearing with this energy. And this is also part of that death rebirth energy. So for those of you who are going through those things, understand that it's like maintaining your balance and maintaining your focus on the things that are actually important to you. You know what I'm saying? It's probably in your best interest because you're going through a rebirth cycle right now. These things are changing. These things are new. We already had the full moon. So a lot of people should understand that there is a profound releasing and recalibration process that goes from the third to the fourth, which is the new moon. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you can't necessarily put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to the full moon and be like, yeah, I did all this and this all happened and, you know, I have this profound realization. Well, now there's the acclimation to it that goes into the new moon that takes you on another journey, right? And this is the path of the higher self, you know, which not a lot of people, you know, necessarily understand how these things work, but here we are. You know, every 28 days you go through a cycle, and here we are. You know what I'm saying? The death, the rebirth, also associated with the spring, which is also rebirth. You know what I'm saying? Like from the death cycle, from the solstice, from winter solstice, which is also considered death, right? So now we're going through all these awakenings, all these realizations. Everything is coming up to the surface right now, and some of us want to bottle it up and push it down inside, but we can't help the fact that it wants to come up. Right? So in essence, when you see those things, when you feel those things inside of yourself, or you're trying to like push them down and all they're doing is trying to come up, basically what you're doing is you're fighting yourself, and maybe you should come to terms with whatever it is that's coming out. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people like to fight and kid themselves and end up in lethargy and complacency because they're lying to themselves, not knowing that it's like, this is not meant to be suppressed, dude. God's calling you. You know, something's literally getting pushed out of you. You know, let it come out, but also have some couth of how you want that. You know what I'm saying? Of where you're going to let that out and how you're going to let that out and what place you're going to take or perspective you're going to take when you do let these things out for this profound releasing moment is what Spirit is saying here. You know, let's not fight the aspects, and they're pointing to the planets, you know, they're pointing to the astrology, but they're also pointing to the things that you can see that are also aspects of these indications that are happening in your life, whether small or big, you know what I'm saying? And it's the little itty bitty ones is that they're saying that's really, really important, because now you're in a feedback system. A lot of things happen instantaneously when you intend them, not realizing that you're in the process of engaging on whatever it is that you asked for, right? You know? And it can seem like, in great energy and not understanding that what you ask, you receive. You know what I'm saying? And it's all about the frequency of how you're willing to receive those things. That's your biggest blessing, right? It's universal law, and it's a profound understanding that we give people here, because it's important, because that's your birthright to know, because this is how you manifest, this is how you create, this is how you take care of yourself, this is how you receive guidance, this is how you download things, this is how you ascend. You know what I'm saying? This is how you receive, fam. Your brain, your mind is basically a transmitter, but it's also a receiver. And, we have to understand those things, A lot of these creations that are outside of ourselves, like Wi-Fi, you know what I'm saying? Microwaves, sound, all these things are based on human technology if you actually look at them. So as within, so without, and now you're seeing those reflections in the universe. It's like, these little comparisons that come out, like, oh, that's funny. Life throws you a metaphor type of energy. Those are those small indications. That's what's coming out, the pollen. That's what they're showing me. That these things are spreading out, and a lot of people are more affected by it now, but also have the ability to see it if they're paying attention. And that's what, that's kind of what the Ace of Pentacles represents here. But I also feel grounding, paying attention to the divine light within, paying attention to your solar chakra, and making sure that you have things right with yourself, with your soul, because things that are contradictive to your soul's path or your soul's journey will actually create great disgust, bowel symptoms, literally acidic, acidic hearts, heartburn, stomach burn, ulcers, irritations, all come from things that are beyond the soul's purpose. You know what I'm saying? We have a tendency to rot that way, not knowing that there's an internal issue that we got to come to terms with, because we're not doing the things that we're actually meant to be doing, or we're supposed to be. What we love doing, right? Because everybody has a choice at the end of the day, but nobody knows what that choice is because they're not in tune with themselves. And this is what guidance is all about. This is about the stepping stones that you're taking to create, to make sure that you're on the inside and not the outside in the cold. You know what I'm saying? Like emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, because our stability is in question right now. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things happening around us that may affect us, may or may not affect us, but they may affect us in a way where it might be something that would drag us down into this poverty mindset, where we have nothing because, oh shit, we're at war, or whatever the fuck little thing that little comes up in your mind that tries to get you to go to a past space and kind of like feel like things aren't working out for me. I don't want to fucking do anything anymore. I give up. When in actuality, that is kind of like what they show me is being released, is being pulled away, if not ripped away from you, just to show you that you can. It's not you can't. You know what I'm saying? That things are not impossible. But, we do have to work for them, but not in a way where we have to fucking literally battle up against some slave mindset constantly and consistently, is what they're telling me. This requires a commitment of seeing the glass half full perspective, but understanding that the glass is always full, because where there's no water, there's always air. So there's material there, is what Spirit is saying. So again, another way of looking at the optimistic perspective of what's happening in people's lives, because things are crashing down and things are being destroyed, they're being dismantled, and they're being rearranged and then redistributed, right? And it's funny because I believe that this was a collective message that happened about 2 to 3 years ago, that I heard from my wife, that said that this moment was going to happen, and here we are. You know what I'm saying? And that's funny, because it just came up in my mind. I was like, I've heard this before. You know what I'm saying? And here we are. These are those beautiful confirmations that cycles and patterns teach us, as long as we are willing to engage in the depth of remembering these things. You know what I'm saying? Because everything is cycles and patterns in one way, and we're all creatures of habit, right? And we have to study ourselves, especially when we realize that we have habits that don't necessarily serve us, but we also have to understand what our innate nature is and what's natural to us, right? And that's the beauty of your star map. Not only the astrology, but also how you interact with the astrology on a daily basis. You know what I'm saying? How these things happen to you. It could be a weekly basis, could be a monthly. I recommend daily, because it's better than the bullshit that you probably look at in the morning, and it's informative, and it'll help you build, grow, and actually watch out for things that might come up to fucking literally distract you from your path in one way, or destroy your path. I mean, this is the beauty of these things, because it's like a heads up that you can kind of tune into on a daily basis that allows you to navigate the day like you check the weather, because the star weather is really important because it's influential on everything around you. And if you're not aware of the things that are influential on everything around you, you become a participant of the garbage that it might produce because the planets are in a certain alignment and shit like that. So that's another perspective of looking at it, and also the glass half full perspective, if that's something that you're going through. You know what I'm saying? They use the term less miserable here. There's a smoothness to life that's associated with paying attention and accessing the rhythm or the flow or the natural essence of the creator, right? The natural essence of the flow, the rhythm. Gaia's heartbeat is another way of saying it, but there's also planetary sounds. There's a philharmonic in the atmosphere that is playing simultaneously, and they're all songs and they're all playing, and they're helping us navigate these things, understand these things, look at these things, but also come to the very principle understanding that you are it and it is you. That is that self-connection that is coming to you right now during this rebirth phase is what I'm getting here. So, I'm not saying the glass half full perspective is going to take you far, because there's no pretending in this space. You know what I'm saying? If you nobody's healed in a sense to the point where they don't, where there's no self-work that needs to be done. As a matter of fact, there's always self-work that needs to be done. But again, we don't have to martyr ourselves into or go into martyrdom like we were talking about before, about healing ourselves or having to come up to terms with whatever's being brought up to the surface because we're so sensitive to the energy around us. I think it's an opportunity to look at your sensitivity and look at the sadness that it brings, because these things are coming up to the surface, and be more courageous on deliberating on whether you want to go down there or not, because you're not meant to. And that's the beauty of nobility, is what Spirit just said here. And I think it's a spiritual understanding of oneself that we also learn along the way, and here we are. You know what I'm saying? Welcome. They're like, we have a message for you. And it's like, I pick up the bottom of the deck and it's the fool's journey, but it's the fool's in reverse if you're unaware of what's really happening, right? It almost feels like you're going backwards and you're getting thrown on the shelf, or you've been discarded or disregarded, and somehow, and that's the energy that is perpetually taking you back to places where there's a review or you don't belong, right? Because we have to understand that we have to go backwards to go forward sometimes, because when we go too far forward, we feel like there's something missing and we have to go backwards. And this happens a lot more than what we like to admit. Retrogrades are a profound example of those things, when the energy turns backwards and then puts you in a place where that energy is present again. So it kind of like messes with your mind, or puts you in a mind state that puts you almost in a survival state at times. This is what, retrograde energy. But here we are with Pluto, and Pluto's kind of bringing it up to the surface. And not too long from now, Mars is literally going to be in Aries, and that might bring a lot of fire intensity and possibly even a lot of conflict within yourselves, causing a lot of disagreements outside of yourself. It might be a little chaotic, dude. So check the price of pay attention here, fam, because you're all beautiful flowers and you need to treat yourself accordingly. Not that you have to sit there and nurture yourself consistently, but you also have to nurture yourself for your growth. You know what I'm saying? And understanding. What do you mean here? Oof. This card came out earlier in a reading that I was listening to about the magician and the alchemization of emotion and passion, drive. It's almost like, dude, there's things coming out of people's chests right now that are kind of like putting them in a position where they're actually questioning the rest of their life and what that's going to look like. It almost feels like a midlife crisis, dude, where people have the ability to observe what's happening and being like, where the fuck do I go from here? If I can't do this anymore, and I don't like doing this, and what the fuck am I doing here? And what's the point of this? Because all it's doing is making me miserable and nothing changes. What the fuck am I doing here? You know what I'm saying? I feel like we're at this pivotal point where all these questions are coming up, dude. But there's also in the background a purifying aspect to what seems, what they say is minuscule, but what seems as kind of like disheartening somehow or discrediting somehow. It's like there's a vapor coming off of people's heads from, they said a lack thereof or discouragement. You know what I'm saying? Like people are getting discouraged right now because of what they see physically. you know, and it's part of a very profound emotional release is what I'm getting here. So there's a buildup that's going on here, and they're pointing out the sign of Virgo, you know, and that just tells me that this is happening right now. You know what I'm saying? Because that's a confirmation, because Virgo energy is about, you know what I'm saying, not going crazy. If you're stable, if you're a stable Virgo, then there's no overthinking. But if you're not, then the Virgo energy will take you into places and have you thinking about every little fucking thing, and possibly have to come out with OCD and some type of, you know, perspective disorder because you went too far. You know what I'm saying? And that's the energy that's represented here. A lot of people are still doing this little mind dance and not knowing that the mind dance is a dance, and they're not supposed to be participating in it because they're supposed to be listening to something that they're not used to listening to, right? You know, so if you've also been hearing high-pitched frequencies, or possibly thumping of the ear, or bumping of the ear, or feeling pressure in your throat, or possibly in your temples, this is also happening to you, you know? And that's part of the alchemization of the emotion, where these things happen naturally because you have come to terms something, whether in spirit, soul, body, you know what I'm saying? These things get released, and sometimes we don't realize that we're, you know, we did the work in astral, or did the work overnight and came to terms with something in our dreams, and then we end up locked up out here, not realizing that we're actually on another level because we had a revelation that was profound, something that we can feel and something that we can remember. You know, I almost hear with like a lot of people, just there's punishment here there, and it's unnecessary is what Spirit is saying here. When we go back to reflect, or we go back to reveal, remember, we're supposed to see the qualities and whatever it is that we're so going back to, because in essence, the only reason that you're back there is because you're not that anymore, or you need to come to terms with something else that Spirit is showing you. But be grateful for the experience, because whatever it's not going to cost you anything. Whatever it is going to cost you is some type of suffering, or a surrender to no more suffering, right? Or no more having to think about that shit, or, you know what I'm saying? And this can all happen in a moment. I'm not, it doesn't have to be this drag on thing, people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, the healers heal, but, you know, these things all come to terms with naturally, whether you're aware of them or not, you know. And we have the ability to kind of harness the energy, or take control of these things, alchemize them, you know, and have them work in our favor, because we're more proud of who we are, and we know what we can do, and we can mix and match energy, and we can bring things together, and we can take them apart, you know. And it's the essence of who we are that we're flowing into right now. And I believe that's what a lot of people are hanging up and getting hung up with, man, is not realizing where they are. And we've been doing these messages over the last couple of days and the last coming weeks about talking about being on a new playing field, and understanding that there is a different way of life simultaneously happening as the life that we are living here, to show us a more natural way of living in this environment, in its current situation, and build something for the future in a positive direction, right? So, you know, in essence, that's a goal, right? So we know what we're shooting for, so that way we put more energy, effort, and time into the commitment of knowing that and making those things happen in our lives, regardless of what they look like, because everybody's unique experiences, you know, everything's changing right there in front of your face, and you're the one seeing it. So, you know, this is not bullshit. You know, you might know exactly what it is, or you might not know exactly what it is, but here we are. Hey, take a look, you know, there it is. You're noticing profound change in your life. Okay. Salah, you know, opportunity. You know, and I believe that's what the hangman represents, because when you hang from the tree of knowledge, you gain the base of knowledge, which is you, and the connection to all that is, which gives you that information that allows you to set yourself free, that allows you to understand these things, or magically become clear on a situation that's been baffling you for years, you know. And there it is what Spirit said, you know, the King of Cups, the master of their emotions, you know, and the Six of Pentacles, which is also, it's like the sixes remind balance. Sixes are balance. Don't we want to bring our lives into balance? That's a choice we all have to make, right? And there should just a little bit on what the morning, like techniques that we share with people, is like, in the morning is the most important part. You want to know why? Because all we do is drag ourselves out of fucking bed, and we don't do shit. You know what I'm saying? Or we dilly-dally, or we fuck around on the phone, which is the best time for committing yourself to understanding that everything that's going on in your mind, or everything that you might have woke up with, is exactly, it's what you're dealing with outside of yourself, not within. But since we're in that sleep-wake state, we like to, we can take things personal, or we can be offended by the energy that we are sensing outside of ourselves, not realizing that we have now engaged in partaking in some bullshit story that we've told ourselves in the past. You know what I'm saying? And that's the beauty of commitment, is what Spirit is saying. Because if you take those 15 minutes, or you take that hour, or you take those 2 hours, or you wake up early, or you intend to wake up early, or you commit to understanding what's happening in a way that makes you comfortable with who you are in that moment, because nothing's wrong unless you're freaking out. You can calm yourself out too. But this is the beauty of discernment. And every morning this happens, and it's something that you can do for yourself. And it's a sacred journey, because every day you get better. And the more you practice, the more you realize, the clearer you become, the more masterful, the more peaceful, the more patient. You have more temperance. You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, these things start to smooth and glide out in your life. And you don't take things personally and become irrational like the way that you used to. Because a lot of us that engage in this way, or understanding these things, understand that we literally react like wounded animals. And, we have such big hearts, dude, that we can literally be misconfused, like literally be taken away or blown away by the feelings that we have, and not knowing how to self-control and stability in those moments. And even if it's just somebody that's in their head and their mind is popping off and talking a bunch of shit that they can't control, they might feel a type of way about, because it feels like there's a monster in their head. Here we are. This is that. Pay attention to what's going on around you versus what's going on within you, because not all voices are yours. And if you're talking shit to yourself, you need clarity on what's happening, because that shouldn't be happening. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this collective message today that helps you gain insight. Keep in mind that these things are good for about, 2 hours till something changes. That's what Spirit just said. Like, share these full videos of these messages, or share it on YouTube, so you'll be more than happy to enjoy it. You can enjoy them over there. Follow, like, subscribe, share.